Welcome to MapleWoodian.com podcast. We have on the phone Nancy Adams. How are you doing, Nancy?
I'm good, Joe. How are you?
Good. We're the third and final podcast of the three candidates running for Township Committee Democratic primary in June. You, of course, are running with Jerry Ryan, the incumbent. You are a challenger. You both received the endorsement of the Democratic Committee. But for those who don't know you, give us your quick background. First of all, how long have you been in Maplewood?
1989.
Wow, that's
25 and a half years, yeah.
That's plenty of time. And then what's your background? Give us the, how'd you get from birth, where, to Maplewood, 1989?
Sure. Philadelphia was my birth. I was the youngest of four. My mother was the youngest of 9 Italians in South Philly. When I was 5, my dad got a job that transferred us to Rochester, New York, which is where I grew up in a suburb of Rochester called Irondequoit.
Wow.
Right on Lake Ontario. Or I wish my house was right on Lake Ontario, but the town is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I grew up. I went to college at Susquehanna University in central Pennsylvania and moved back to Rochester, where I subsequently got married and had 3 kids. Gary Shippey was my first husband, and he and I have 3 children together, and we moved to Maplewood when I was we looked at houses in Maplewood when I was 8 months pregnant with my youngest, Michael. And,
oh, my gosh.
We had, actually, this is relevant for later, we looked
Sure.
at 25 houses on June 1st in 100-degree heat when I was 8 months pregnant, and I remember the date because it's also my birthday. So we looked at all those houses at once, and we narrowed it down to, 5 very methodically. We looked out in Clinton, and we said, no, we like Maplewood better. So we came back, looked at a few more, and then headed home and put an offer in on one. And then around Labor Day is when we moved down here with my 3 kids and 2-month-old, including 2-month-old Michael. So, we moved down here, and the reason that was relevant is I had never seen Springfield Avenue, and you know where I live. I live.
Yes, we're, full disclosure, we're College Hill neighbors.
Right, and so I was very curious about that, wow, I never even saw that major commercial area. Literally, I can see it from my yard. So, but that's what Springfield Avenue was 25 years ago. People avoided it, realtors in particular. So, at any rate, then when we moved here and I, enrolled my kids in school, Prospect Preschool in Tuscan, and with the baby, I then got involved at Tuscan, of course, as young parents are wont to do. You get involved in your kids' school. I ended up starting the theater back up again at Tuscan, which the stage had been dark for 30 years, so we had to build flats and do all that stuff. So for that 1 year at Tuscan, it took an entire year, and I produced and directed Really Rosie by Maurice Sendak and music by Carole King, and it was a great big hit, but we had to fix the footlights and.
So you really helped rejuvenate the auditorium there.
Exactly.
Oh, I don't think a lot of people knew that.
Yeah, well, and we still continue the shows now, more in a variety show aspect, which I didn't want to do. So we did Rosie, and I had Vicki Carter, my musical director, with
sure, we know her
Broadway credentials. So you don't get any better than that. But it was a great experience. And then my neighbor and I, since I did have little kids around, and I was an at-home mom, I joined the League of Women Voters so that I could go to meetings and talk use my brain differently and actually have discussions about, issues that face our country. And League is great at sort of training through the way it discusses things on a nonpartisan basis. So when discussions take place, they're extremely well-rounded and take all sides into consideration on issues, and that was a great training ground for me as far as just to be able to be analytical about things a little bit and try to see all sides of an issue. So that was important to me. And then we just started, my next-door neighbor and I started saying, what's going on with Springfield Avenue? Why aren't they doing anything? Bob Grassmere was mayor at the time, and so we started going to the Economic Development Commission meetings every month and kept bringing up Springfield Avenue, and after a year they finally just appointed us to the commission. And
the Economic Development Commission?
Yes.
This was, what year were you appointed, do you think?
I want to say 92.
Okay, because Grassmere was in office until soon after he left, correct?
Yeah, he left. This was soon after he left, yeah.
For those who don't know, he was the longest-serving mayor, 23 years, I believe, and a Republican.
Right. It was a Republican-run town back when we moved here, and, I'm not so sure parties has too much to do with local politics.
I think you're right.
It does, but really the issues are local, right? So
yes.
We want to think about how to get stuff done. But I don't think that there had been any attention really paid to Springfield Avenue at the time. So we just kind of gathered some, actually that was the door-to-door, we went founding of College Hill Neighborhood Association because we felt like we needed more public pressure on the governing body to get something done over there. Then we ended up, once we founded College Hill, we started meetings with the Hilton Neighborhood Association, and mind you, this is all back when you did door-to-door and phone calls. You didn't have...
There weren't emails and cell phones.
And there wasn't Facebook to get started or all that, so it was a lot more legwork. But.
And then give us your quick other service. Now, you had also been appointed to what other...
the planning board?
Right. When did that first happen?
That was 6 years ago. So when we founded the Springfield Avenue Partnership, I worked on that, and we formulated it and everything. And then when I went...
So you were one of the founders of the Springfield Avenue Partnership?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay.
And actually the catalyst for it, because...
Excellent. See, this is what people need to know.
Yeah. So that volunteer work, that activism for a few years got me into my career, which is downtown management, downtown revitalization. So I got a job at being the head of Main Street South Orange, which was it was not a special improvement district or a business improvement district back then, but it was a Main Street program. And real quick, the Main Street program was started by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. They created the National Main Street Center so that because they saw historic buildings being destroyed and downtown being sort of ruined in trying to compete with malls or strip malls and stuff. So what ended up happening is I started working in that field. I got certified by the National Trust in downtown management. And so for the last 20 years or so, I've been working in that field, and right now I'm doing consulting and marketing and events or downtown revitalization work.
Now, and you've been on the planning board for 6 years?
Right.
Now, first, of course, one of the big issues that's up this year, although we don't want to dwell on it too long, is the post office redevelopment.
Right.
What's your thought on sort of the current status of that with the latest approach and the pilot, which I always think is a code word for tax abatement?
Right.
Are you for, against, not sure?
Oh, I'm for a active mixed use on that site.
Right.
I think that end of Maplewood Avenue has suffered for years by the use of the post office on such a big lot.
Right.
And with the big parking lot, so when the post office wasn't open, which was every night and all weekend pretty much except for Saturday mornings, it was a dark area and it was not a pedestrian zone as far as the pedestrian traffic stops at the Bank of America or there's occasional trips to King's. People come out of the movie theater and they turn right or they go home. So those businesses at the end of the avenue there have been marginalized by the lack of pedestrian traffic and the lack of life at that end of the street. So as far as the use of that lot goes, I'm very much in favor of active mixed use, which I think will create the same sort of environment that we love down in the center of the village, which is activity on both sides of the street. So I will see this on the planning board, obviously, when it comes before us, I assume in June. I haven't seen the official site plan. I've seen the PDF presentation, and I have a few issues of my own with the design that I've seen, but again, I haven't seen the official site plan. So I've gained sort of a reputation on the planning board as not being afraid to challenge the applicants, not being afraid to ask the applicants for them to, if they're asking for any relief from any ordinances in town, a variance or a design waiver, that opens the door for us to ask for a little more from them. So that's pretty much what I do, and in this case, obviously I will do the same thing. So I will see the design when I see it. As far as the pilot goes, a payment in lieu of taxes is typical and very essential sometimes for being able to get development done on in areas or lots that are either constrictive in some way, difficult to develop, or are brownfields, or different contamination issues, or just otherwise by location aren't necessarily attractive to a developer because there's plenty of places they can redevelop. So I don't oppose pilots as a general rule. I do think that in recent years it's become almost like a status quo or an expectation that they be given, and so developers are naturally going to ask for them. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to get on the township committee, was to be able to say, wait, I know this is standard operating procedure of getting pilots, but let's look and see why you really need it. Convince me why you really need it. As far as the post office pilot goes, I think it's one of the smallest pilots I've ever heard of, first of all. Most pilots are much longer term. And in this case, the first 2 years of it, where we would not be collecting tax revenue anyway, they won't be paying taxes on those first 2 years while it's under construction, which is normal. And smart business, if I'm opening a bakery in a small retail shop, I'm going to negotiate with the landowner, the property owner, that I don't pay rent until I've fitted out his space. So it's sort of the same kind of concept. And then you have a 3-year abatement, but the good news is that at the end of 10 years, the town's getting about close to $400,000 more than they would otherwise get in the 10-year total. So I don't see this as a real negative in regard to the post office. Now, argument, and of course I wasn't involved in the negotiations, so I can't say, I don't know what the agreement and how it was reached, so I can't necessarily full-heartedly support it, but I don't necessarily oppose it either. So, there are other pilots that I would have more questions about as well. So that's sort of my take on the post office site.
Interesting. Now, there are other issues, obviously. The big one always comes up, property taxes. They're horrible. They're going to go up again this year, about $77 from the Township Committee budget, more than $100 from the school district per average home. What can we do, what can you do to ease this, or is it something that's really in the state's hands?
Well, I think it would be helpful if the state would be more helpful in this regard.
How do we manage that?
Lobbying, I guess. We do have pretty good representation. I shouldn't say pretty good, really good representation with John McKeon and Mila Jacey in particular, as far as they're lobbying their issues and working hard on their issues. There are, we need to start looking at maybe not having to rely so heavily on property taxes and rely more on other tax methods. For example, I know it's not popular, but the gas tax, as I brought up a few weeks back, has not been raised. And so what our property taxes end up going toward this, to the county and to the schools and to the municipality in a smaller percentage. But we need to have other ways, in statewide and countywide and locally, to generate revenue without it always being based on property tax. So that said, I would like the state to look into ways to alleviate the property tax burden, which doesn't look like they're going to do anytime soon. Same with the school aid. So we're sort of paying for everything the state is not doing. And that said, there's, Essex County is more expensive for other reasons, and like doing a lot to take care of Newark. And then we don't have an ability to raise revenue in such a highly developed town as Maplewood unless we redevelop, which is why these redevelopment projects are so important. That's the only way we can make a rateable out of, say, the Wyman Ford used car lot on Springfield Avenue, which is paying just the land value pretty much. There's hardly any improvement on it. So, getting things like that moving again is important, and that's why I want to be part of that.
A lot of things have been discussed. I know we talked to Greg Lembrick and to Jerry Ryan about shared services. Mr. Lembrick talked about merging fire departments. Mm-hmm. I know Mr. Ryan talked about other things. We've already merged municipal courts.
Right.
What's your thought on how much can we do with South Orange and still remain Maplewood?
Yeah, I think there's more we can do, and not just with South Orange. I think there's opportunities outside of just the two municipalities.
Sure.
I think a natural merging of efforts would be in the recreation department, because we already share a school district. It makes perfect sense to share recreation programs. And frankly, I think South Orange's rec department is run more efficiently and better than ours is. I also think there's opportunity in working together with, which would address another issue with the animal shelter. I'd love to see the old building from Jersey Animal Coalition be opened up again and used and either run by South Orange and we pay into it, or run by both of us. And there are some legal issues, I believe, with regard to that, ownership of that and everything that needs to be straightened out. But I think that's an opportunity to solve two issues. And then also senior services need to be expanded. The best thing I felt like at the candidates forum that was run by the senior share group that just was formed last year, was all the brainstorming we did on issues regarding senior services and how important it is to keep the senior population in Maplewood, which is difficult to do. That's one of the redevelopment things that I think is good, having all the residences in the apartments at the PSE&G site will give seniors an option as to staying in Maplewood and downsizing. And if you don't have those kinds of places for them to move to, which we didn't not that many years ago. We only had houses. You moved into a house, or you moved to a senior center, or you moved out of town. So I'm hoping that those will give that ability to them. But anyway, I digressed. I'm sorry from the
No, it's good to hear it all.
But the shared services also, I think there's opportunity with health services that we have. I don't know if there's any. I know we already do a lot with Springfield, Milburn, even the Board of Ed on sharing things like fuel purchasing and code enforcement, vehicle maintenance, and things like that. But I think we need to look at a purchasing shared service as well, and maybe that's something that includes all towns in Essex County and trying to purchase equipment on a more of a bulk level.
Right. I think at the Touch Committee meeting the other night, they were talking about salt for the winter months, that they're going to go into some kind of long-term bulk purchase. I mean, that's just the kind of thing that I know is raised. I don't want to keep you longer than we need to. Again, we're talking to Nancy Adams. She's running for Township Committee, June 2nd primary. What would be your biggest issue or issues that you would want to raise if you get on the Township Committee that maybe haven't been brought up?
I do have some concerns about enforcement of existing ordinances with regard to whether it's code enforcement or enforcement of noise ordinances, things like that. I've been dismayed by the lack of tree replenishment. As you know, I walk all over Maplewood and exercise, and so I literally walk all over this town from my house. So, and not only have there not been enough trees replenished from Sandy and from the microburst in Memorial Park, for example, you never used to be able to see Baker Street when you were standing by the duck pond, and now you can. So, but there's also countless empty tree pits that used to have trees in them that are not replenished with trees. Right over here on Oberlin is a good example. And as you walk around town, I just see them over and over, and it just it irks me all the time. So I'd that's one of the main things I really want to address. I want to look for grants to buy more trees. I want to maybe even start a funding mechanism in town, whether it's, voluntary for people who, want to help re-green Maplewood, if you will. I remember, like 4 years ago, my son who lived in Brooklyn at the time, was walking home from the train, and he came in and he's like, "Where all the trees go? Isn't this Maplewood?" And
we got our name from something, right?
Yeah, right. So I just think it's something that's understandably been hard to keep up with, but it's not being addressed to my satisfaction. So public safety, I think there could be some more community building with the police and maybe some bike or pedestrian patrols. I know they do targeted area, and the crime has continued to decrease, and they do a great job. But there's always room for more, and I think those are the kinds of things I want to try to effectuate positive change with. So.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We've been talking to Nancy Adams, running for Township Committee. Now, you ran previously, correct? When was this?
9 years ago, I got asked to run off the line against incumbents, and we only had 5 weeks that time, and I said okay, because I was, crazy, but
hey, it's good experience, though, right?
It was really good experience walking door to door and talking to people, and I only lost by 27 votes, so I literally ran out of like a day or two more. Might have made a difference.
What do you say to those who think, we mentioned this earlier, the idea you have to run in the primary for the Democratic nomination, not a big turnout, hopefully it'll be a bigger turnout, but should there be nonpartisan elections at this level, or do people find a way to vote if they have to?
I think it's tough, because it's just the way this town, the charter and everything is laid out in Maplewood. I know they have nonpartisan elections in South Orange, and they have trouble with turnout as well because the election's in May.
Well, that's a different problem, yeah.
Right, and the Board of Ed is now moved to November, so it's always worth looking at because people are busy. I think the state made a good step in allowing for mail-in balloting, even if you're not going to be out,
right.
Absent. But they didn't market it very much, so most people don't even know that, and you still have to apply for it and everything. But so maybe if that happens more, give that a little more time, people might be more inclined to go ahead and vote, since they don't have to go anywhere to do it. They can just do it from their home. So I think let's give that a little more time before we go through all the steps that are necessary to change charter or change that kind of other point in the election. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you for talking to Nancy Adams. She's running for Township Committee, the June 2nd Democratic primary. We will be posting more of your events and your information and links to your website. People can reach out, ask questions, find out more. Of course, there'll be a big debate Thursday night, May 21st.
Right.
And there'll be more chances after that to ask questions and find out more. But the best thing is to find out the most you can, vote. And now you know your long history of public service. That's great.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's not been looking for recognition as much as it's just been, I tend to be the type of person who sees a problem and instead of complaining about it, I try the complaining part, but then if nobody does anything about it, then I get involved, and that's what happened with College Hill, Springfield Avenue. It happened a lot in my work, and now I'm running so that I can effectuate change that I want to see that I haven't seen done yet. So.
Well, excellent. Well, good luck, and thanks for spending some time with us, and onward to the election.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Joe.
Thank you.